Hello, everyone, and I will just share my screen so that you can all see the presentation. Is it working for everyone? Would be great if you could give me some feedback. You can just also speak because I cannot read the chat in between because of the settings.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes,
Okay.
working.
So I was wondering, where do you all come from? Are you dentists? What is your background? And yeah, maybe we could start a little round just by presenting yourself. So maybe I can start. I'm Astrid de Vriese, and I'm a doctor of dental medicine, and I'm currently working at the University Hospital of Aachen. This is in the west of Germany, and I'm in the field of the prosthodontics. Maybe you could also start and present yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. David Fox, and I teach in the Department of Prosthodontics at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. And I also do some lecturing for SPEAR education. And I primarily work with veterans. I'm fellowship trained in airway dental medicine.
Mhm.
But I also have I'm an old guy. I have a legacy practice of patients.
Oh, very interesting.
I am Dr. Arsalan Elahi, general dentist from Connecticut. I have a private practice, and that's really it.
Nice. So how did you get to know about the webinar of Bausch? Was it during a conference or?
Yes, I went to a conference in New York City, and that's where I learned about the occlusal sense from Bausch. And
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right. Hello. Yeah, this is Dr. Rebecca Ho from Sydney. I'm just a general dentist. I'm starting to learn to do a little bit more about full mouth rehab. So I saw the machine at the ADX, one of the dental show, and
Mhm.
I bought the machine and yeah, just trying to learn how to use it.
Perfect. That's great. So you already have the machine and
Yeah.
yeah, you now want to get started. Did you already start using it in some patients or?
Uh, yeah, I have tried, but having problems linking it with my Bluetooth, with the
Ah, okay.
internet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I can also we can work out and fix that maybe also someone from the region comes along and helps you to install everything because this is also a service which we can organize. This is no problem.
Okay. Yep.
And
Sure.
Astrid, I would also like to know the comparisons because I'm an educator between T-scan and Bausch, because we're trying to integrate a lot of things in the PROS department at the university. So the goal is for me, I have the equipment, but I'd like to work with residents, maybe even do a research project to have a compare contrast between T-scan and Bausch, and then in a more bigger way, look at Modjaw with all of its capacity as well. Just so
Mhm.
touch
And
on
what is it? What is a T-scan?
T-scan is another type of occlusal registration like Bosch, but been in existence a lot
Ah,
longer
okay.
with prosthodontists for probably 35 years.
All right. Okay. Yeah. We can
Also
definitely,
by
I mean,
force, it looks at force, but of course, much thinner articulating medium
mhm.
Bosch than it is with the T-scan. So hopefully you can, if you're training as a prosthodontist or you are a prosthodontist, you may be able to come up with some discussions on that.
Yes, maybe we can do this in the end. I will first like give the webinar, and then afterwards we can for sure discuss all the subjects, all questions you still have. Um, so regarding the structure of the webinar, we will start with some basic information, which we will just be going on quite quickly because you are all very experienced, as I heard. And then I will also give some examples of a normal bite recording and some patients with problems which were registered. And then and then in the end we have some of course sufficient time for questions. So first, let's talk about the company Bausch. Bausch is based in Cologne and was founded in 1953 by the dentist Dr. Jean Bausch and his son Dr. Hans Bausch. And today the company is run by their sons, André and Peter Bausch. And since its foundation, the company has continuously modernized and innovated its products. And one example is, of course, the OccluSense, which is now a digital way of looking at the occlusion. So, what is occlusion? Occlusion is we divide it in a static occlusion and also a dynamic occlusion. And we always want to know about the way the patient bites in order to be able to see the function also of their teeth. And in the past, or also today, we use articulation paper, which marks us the points where there's a lot of contact between the upper and the lower jaws. And there are different types. They have different thickness. We, for example, have the occlusion paper, which is here in blue, which is used for maybe fillings to correct them. And then we have the Artifol, which is a lot thinner, so that you can really make an occlusional profile of the patient. But what we now have is, so they exist in different colors, and in order to take a dynamic occlusion, we need 4 colors. So first, for the static occlusion, there's the color blue. Then there's, for the protrusion, we have another color, and as you can see, we use different colors for all the different movements, which takes a long while. So this is then for the medio and lateral protrusion, and what we have now on the teeth is always the last situation, so the final way how it looks. And what we want to do with the OccluSense, this is a modernization and takes a digital way of how the patient bites, which is very important because it allows us to see really from the beginning to the end the different steps on how the patient moves and how the occlusal contacts appear. So this is how it looks. This is the hand bar, I would say, and then we have this U-formed stripe where the patient bites on, and you put it inside the machine by clicking it in the 3 locks, and you insert it like it's illustrated here on this slide, and then you give an introduction to the patient to bite on it in different ways. And it's translated to an iPad via WLAN or via the internet from your dental office. And then there are different ways on how to demonstrate and how now you see the video sequence on how the patient bites from the beginning to the end of occlusional steps. So how does it, what are the different parts? So first we have the OccluSense handheld. Then we have the iPad, which is used and which needs to be combined. And for sure, you need the app, OccluSense app, which is right now available in multiple languages. And you need internet. When it comes to the sensors, we have different sizes. There are two different, there's one from 71 millimeters and one which is a little bit bigger. It's 77 millimeters, and it can measure around 250 pressure levels, which shows really a variation of the different occlusional pressure points. It's very thin. It's only 60 microns thin, and it's really flexible. So it means we have a thin foil which is not interfering too much with the with the occlusion. Then we also have the red color, which marks the points on the surfaces of the teeth, and which allows the digital video sequence of the whole steps. But now, how does the OccluSense work? When you start, you just need to have a connection with the internet. Then you link it with your handle. You open the app, which is marked here. It's the OccluSense app. And then you first have to identify one patient. You can either choose one or start to put a new patient in the system. And here is demonstrated how you do the initial setup. Then there's a nice video which is showing you how to do it, to first install the hand device. Then connect with the internet. And as soon as they are connected, the initial setup is done. And then we can start with selecting the patient. There's also the whole video sequence on the internet, so I will now continue with the step where we go to the patient. So what is important for the registration is that you use there are two different handbars. So one is with the OccluFoil, and the other one is the green one where you can do the registration with. And this needs to be inserted first so that you can registrate and recalibrate the device. This was shown in the beginning of the video, the green hand device. There you can see it again. So this was first a sensor test to calibrate the device, and then you can continue with the first patient. But maybe we can start back to the question why you would need an OccluSense device. So as we said, when you check the occlusion points with paper or foils, then you also always have the last position, so the maximal intercuspidal position. And when you now use you would need to take pictures of the third step, so of the last point, in order to be able to compare it with different settings in the treatment of the patient. When we use OccluSense, you can really have a look from the beginning to the end of how the occlusional points how they start and how they're in the start, in the middle, and also in the end. And you can take a short video sequence in order to visualize it for the patient and also for yourself. And you can easily compare it with different settings in the beginning and afterwards, also during treatment. And it is, for example, very useful, especially when you have teeth where there is, for example, ceramics, and in order to avoid chipping, and also for patients who have, for example, problems in their jaws, so CMD problems. So it's useful to detect hidden contacts where maybe the patient doesn't really have a clinical problem, but you see in the OccluSense a more detailed way of the occlusional points. And this is also necessary to really early detect and avoid periodontal damage, for example, due to incorrect loading of the occlusional force. And this is especially important for implant and prosthetics, and it's very useful to avoid chipping. The recording, as I said, is very helpful to see it in the beginning and in the end of the treatment, and also to be able to compare the different treatment steps. And last but not least, the documentation of the bite from the patient is also a very important point. So how to use the OccluSense? If you want to start using it, you can first put a new patient inside. We already showed in the video, you just put in all the data from the patients. Then you mark him as active. And then as soon as you have done this, you can start using the OccluSense handle, and you can tap on New Recording. And then you get this view inside of the OccluSense app, and you can just start to adjust the time and the frequency of the recording. So that means in which sequence the registrations, the data are transferred to your OccluSense app. And you can start the registration before in a live mode using the green button. And if you want to have then it starts from the first occlusional point, or you use the red point, and this makes it automatically start. So here we have an example how to put it into the patient. You just squeeze it from the side, and then you press, for example, red, then it starts the registration from the point where you start clicking on it. And when the patient bites, it takes those video sequences just to the point where you press this button again. And it is very useful and helpful to, at the beginning, really advise the patient how to bite correctly. So what I personally do is I tell him to first close and open his mouth, like doing the static occlusion, and then afterwards I tell him to move his teeth to the right and to the left, and then to the front. You can decide in which way you want him to move his lower jaw, but it's important to really tell him in advance so that the sequence of the video is short and not too long and too difficult to analyze. So this is then how it looks on the app on the right-hand side, and this is how the situation looks in the patient itself. So you still have the marks on the teeth and you have them on the app. So this is really helpful if you really want to compare and you want to see, okay, I now have the view in the app and now I want to transfer it to the patient, and that you can easily do it using this tool. So here it's what I already said. When you press the pink button, the device starts immediately. And when you when you want to manually start the recording, you can then press this button. All the different options, how to like is recorded in the manual, and you can find it more in more explained in more detail. Let us now come to the interpretation of the results. So the pressure and the size of the contact points are really important to understand how the occlusal situation is. So we have the low pressure is illustrated in lower bars and a high pressure. So for example, a first contact is illustrated using higher bars. And then you can also see it in the different size of the picture of the area. We have a small area, which is marked in a smaller and in a red color. And when the area is more wide, we have this green size, and it's a large green color and a larger size. And this is how you can understand it. So if there's a bridge, for example, and there's the same pressure load, and you now compare the pressure on the two different pillars of the bridge, then you have on the left pillar, you can see that there's a really wide base, which means the pressure is not too high because it's a higher area. And on the right-hand side, you can see there's a really small area where all the pressure comes down and there is a higher point. So this means the smaller illustration of the bars is, of the area is a high pressure and also a high bar. So here you can see that the difference in pressure between the two is very small, and on the right-hand side, we can see that the difference in pressure is high. And compared, for example, if you would have also contacts on in the surrounding area. So which is important, which should be illustrated here, was that we have it's always compared to the points surrounded, and it's not an absolute value. It's more like you can detect on how the surface is not in absolute pressure points, but more in comparing the different types. we already had this, so I need to skip it. And this is now a different method of explaining it. If you now imagine that this bridge is coming down to the lower part, then we would have a first contact on the third pillar of the left-hand side. And so we expect there like a reddish point, reddish bar. In the surrounding, we would expect, okay, these two in next to the lowest one are going to be coming down as a second point, and they will be in an orange bar because the pressure will be there in like in the middle between high pressure and low pressure. And then all the three on the right and the one on the left, the pillar, they will be green because the pressure will be relatively low. And this is what is illustrated here. So if you would now have a lower jaw, which is totally flat, coming to the upper jaw, which would have a shape like this, then you would have this translated into the OccluSense app by showing you these colors. So red would mark a really high pressure in this area, then orange a little bit less compared to this one next to it, and then green would be lower pressure. So if maybe the bridge illustration was a little bit confusing, we also like to use the illustration of when you walk on needles. So just imagine that you stand on a plate with all needles which have the same height and the same surface area. Then you would be able to stand on maybe a platform like this. And if you now see a red color of the bars, then you would have to imagine that you stand on a platform with needles, showing you where the needles are really different in the height. So that means you would have some areas where it's really sharp and some where, and when you have like maybe a green color, then it would be easier to stand on it. Okay, but what is important is that red is not always is not an absolute value, as I said, but it's always compared to the point next to it. So there can be different red points, but all of them they will be always compared to the contact which is just next to it. That means just the difference is marked and not the absolute value. So when you see a red point, it means there's a high difference between the contacts, and this would be, for example, an initial occlusal contact, which is standing alone or which is not in full intercuspidation. And on the other hand, if you see a green column, it means that the two different pressure points, the difference is really low. Which would be, for example, in a really abrasive status, and or where we have where the contacts are really have a similar pressure. It is important to know that we don't only have green, yellow, and red, but there is a variation of 250 pressure points, and the color is also represented by going through a really continuous scalar. So when we look at this, we have a different colors and a different way of letting it like showing us the results. So if you have a look at the left upper part, there you can see a two-dimensional view, and we see that there is most of the contacts are in the upper left quadrant. And there you also see on the sides of the U shape, you see the percentage of the occlusional points. So it means that the 100% is in one part of the lower jaw, or one part of the the occlusional parts. And there's also, for example, this three-dimensional view, and there you can also see not only the color, but you also see the height of the different bars. Oh, I was too fast. Yeah, here, for example, when you, I can try to restart it again. Oh, 1 second. So if you look at the static occlusion, then you can see this situation maybe. It means we have here the two different views. So on the left-hand side, you have this two-dimensional view, and on the right-hand side, you have this 3D view. So what we see is that this patient is relatively has contacts on both sides, and when you look at the different percentages, you can see that there are the most of the occlusional parts are on the upper left side of the U shape. That means it's balanced, but the occlusion is not super well balanced, because we have maybe red points in different areas, but the main pressure is on the left upper part, so in the molar regions. And when you look at the right-hand side, you can there see how the occlusion points are spreaded, and you can see that we have some high pressure points, and we have a lot of more abrasive tooth more in the back of the jaws. So, and when we then perform the recording of the dynamic occlusion, then I always like to start with first with the static occlusion, which you just saw. And now this is the dynamic occlusion to the right-hand side. So it's a lateral protrusion. Now you see the protrusion. And now you see the static occlusion again. So you already saw a few of the features of the OccluSense app. So as I said, we have the option to only show it in 2D, where you have those marked percentages. And we have the option to mark it in 3D, or you can also combine it, which I prefer actually, because it's really nice to see the spreading of the percentages and also the height of the bars from the 2D version. So what can also be done, and how can you modify it? So what you can do, apart from 2D and 3D, which you can choose like it's indicated here, you can also choose to turn it around, so you can have a look at it from all different viewing points. you can, when you recorded the sequence of the occlusion, you can pause it, you can start it, or you can modify it however you want. And you can also do a filtering option. This is really interesting if you really want to see which point, or where is the point which is the highest or has the highest pressure point. Then you can really filter all the lower pressure points so that it becomes easier for you to look at the data. And you can also use, if you want to have more options, you can click on the 3 points where you can have a lot more of additional things you can choose from. And if you want to compare recordings, this can also be done when clicking on the button on the left lower part. So here it's illustrated how the filtering works. When you really want to see only the highest points, for example, the higher pressure points, you can filter all the rest out so that it becomes really easy to have a look at the data. It's, of course, it's easy to have a look at the data from the iPad, but if you want to transfer it into your system in the dental office, you can do that by clicking on the exporting option, which is illustrated there. It's on the up, yeah, now it's illustrated. That's how you can export maybe an image. You can also export video sequences and insert it into your dental office software, whatever you use. You can export it as a PDF or as a PNG. These are the 2 options, and it's the same for the video. This can also be exported. So here you have the link to, yeah. Let's now come to the most important part. I think that's why you all came, to really have a look at some examples from the clinic, which I took, and how to interpret the data. So, which is firstly important that we have this red mark in the front, and this needs to be really in the middle of the teeth, so in the middle of the 2 middle incisives. So this is important to have a good position of the OccluSense sensor in the mouth so that the registration is good. This is marked here with this red triangle. And in order to really have a good shape in the mouth, you can also have a look at the marks on the OccluSense foil, which is supposed to really have the size of 1 teeth in this position. So how does it look if you have, for example, this model on the left-hand side, and you perform a static occlusion, then you get on both sides the contacts, and we have, for example, the regular occlusion on the molars, which is marked in blue. Then we have the regular occlusion on the premolars, which is marked in orange. And then there is one really high pressure point, and this is marked. It's the easiest way. That's why I really like the compared vision in 2D and 3D, because you can see that the highest pressure is now on the right-hand side on the part of the molars. And as it's marked, it's 50% of the contacts is in this area. So when you then look at the clinical, at the prosthetics, you see that there is one point where we have, which is marked in purple, where you can really see there's a high intensity of the color from the occlufoil, and you also see in the OccluSense bars, it's red and it's very high. So here it's marked and compared with the clinical part. And here are the regular occlusion points on the premolars. And then the contact which is too high and which is shown also on the prosthetics and then in the 3D version. So that would, of course, if you have this combination of the clinical part and the part of the OccluSense app, then you can, for example, have a little modification of this area and lower it a little bit. So, and then we wondered how it looks when we do the lateral protrusion, and that's what I said. We always need to start with the static occlusion, then we do the dynamic occlusion, and there I like to start with the lateral protrusion to the right, then to the left, and then to the front. And if we really see this point where we had the highest contact points, then it's a premature contact when it keeps occurring in different versions of the movement, and then it needs to be reduced. So it was it was the case for the lateral protrusion. Now it's also the case for the protrusion. You really can see when you move your teeth to the front that this contact on the highest pressure point and is still existing in this part of the movement. So as a first case, I want to present you a patient which is already knows that he's doing a lot of bruxism. She's a female patient, and she has a lot of pain in her ears and also has problems with her neck and with her spine. And she comes with this initial situation, and then we had a look at her teeth from the inside, and we saw some fillings, but nothing where we would say, okay, there's really something we would do right now. But we noticed that there is a high muscle tension, and then we decided to perform the OccluSense analysis. We first started with a static occlusion, and we asked the patient to just open and close her mouth. And then we performed also the different movements in all the different directions. So to the left, to the right, and then to the front. And we saw that when we looked from the beginning to the end, we saw that in the end, it was okay. The occlusion was more or less equal on both sides, but that there was a primary pre-contact on the tooth 4H, and that there was an unequal load in the intercuspidal position, and also that there is a lot of contact on the in the fourth quadrant, especially from the 4-1 to until 4-5. And when we did the protrusion, this contact on the 4-8 still occurred. And also, when we did the mediotrusion, we had this contact on the same tooth, so on 4-8. So, and when we did the medial occlusion to the right, we saw that there are contacts on both sides, so on 4/8 and 3/8. So it was when we then asked the patient to do the movement of the bruxism, we saw that that this contact on 4/8 still was existing, and which led us to reduce this point. And yeah, this is how we then did it. We reduced it a little bit to have a really equilibrium between the left and the right side. Now to the next case, which I would like to present to you. There we have a patient which has a little bit shorter version of prosthodontic treatment. And when we performed the lateral occlusion to the left-hand side, there was a canine movement, which looked very nice and which we liked in the situation, because this was his normal position and there was no contact on the other side. When we then did the protrusion, we saw that there is also contact in the front. And so this is now the last case where we had a patient with a hemimandibular hyperplasia. So this can be seen when you look at the different size of the mandibula and of the caput mandibulae, where we had this patient came to us and told us that she had an extraction of her wisdom tooth, which has not been, which was performed when she was still growing, and this hindered one side to fully grow and to perform the full growth of the lower mandibula. And that's why she had this disbalance. And what we did is we produced a night guard splint, and it is firstly used to protect the teeth from abrasion, and also to have a rebalanced situation. So this is how it looked without night guard. Maybe I can show this by clicking here. Yeah, this is how it looked without night guard. So you really see that on the right-hand side that there is the only contacts are on the right-hand side, and the left-hand side has no occlusional points, or very, very, very less. And when we then gave her the night guard, then we performed the same movements. And here you can see that the occlusion is really well disturbed. And if you turn it around, you can easily see that there is the occlusional parts are much better. I will try to maybe redo it again. Yeah, this is now first the static occlusion. This is now the lateral protrusion to the left-hand side. This is how it looked. So there's really, as you all can also see in the picture, there's a guidance from the front teeth, which is done by the first tooth and also from the canine tooth on the left-hand side. And when we asked her to perform the protrusion, we can clearly see that that she has a lot of contact here, and the other teeth, they don't have any contact anymore. This is how this movement looked. So to maybe end with, or coming to the end, I would like to discuss with you if the OccluSense really replaces articulation paper or articulation foil. And in my opinion, I think both are have their places in the dentistry. So it really depends on the indication. When we use, or what I'd like to do is when I have a really easy situation and when I just want to check if the filling, when I'm just modulating it, I like to use the articulation paper for the really rough adjustments, and then the Artifold for the the fine adjustment. But when I really have a different case where I want to have maybe where I know, okay, this patient is going to come again, and or it has or she has a really a history of pain, or it's a really difficult situation, then I like to keep her to follow up on her situation, and then I really like to use the OccluSense and to have a registration before and after the treatment. And during the treatment, I like to use the articulation paper. So this is actually how I do it. I check in a difficult situation, I check the contacts before and check how the pressure distribution is. Then in order to adjust, I use the articulation paper. And then in the end, to really have a good final view, I have the controlled situation with again with the OccluSense. And this I also put into our system so that we have a vision or have a view from before and afterwards. So that we also, if she comes again with problems or if maybe something happened, then we can have a look together on the registration, how it was before. I think we can skip this. This is just some information how others liked it. And we can continue with the last slides. So if you want to get started, as I already mentioned, we have to have an iPad, which so it needs to be from Apple. This is important, so because our app is only supported from the App Store, and it's supposed to be from 2014 or a newer version. And the OccluSense app is available and free to download in 12 different languages. And for sure, you need a Wi-Fi connection and then the OccluSense system. So when you order it, it comes inside this package. So you have this little suitcase. You have an instruction how to use it, how to get started, and you get a set of those registration foils. You get the handle, and it's yeah, you can easily load it without having a contact, and you can disinfect it easily because it's really easy to use. And yeah, then you can get started. And I would now like to thank you for your attention. And if you want, we can discuss and all the questions you had right now, so that everybody who doesn't have any questions, they can also already leave, and all the ones who want to ask something can go ahead.